Question 1. In light of recent developments in commercial property insurance, a manufacturing company in Charlotte experiences a partial loss due to an electrical fire that destroyed machinery and halted operations for several weeks. The company had a building and personal property (BPP) policy and an attached business income coverage endorsement. Upon submitting a claim, the insurer offers compensation for only the physical damage to the equipment. The income loss weighs the best course of action for the insured. They accept the settlement since business income coverage only applies to total losses. B. Dispute the settlement, as the business income endorsement is meant to cover lost income during suspension of operations caused by a covered peril. C. File a new claim under a different policy. D. Seek compensation from the third-party liability claim. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The business income coverage form CP030 is designed to cover the actual loss of income sustained due to a necessary suspension of operations resulting from direct physical loss to property at the premises caused by a covered cause of loss, since the fire was a covered peril and directly resulted in the suspension of operations. The insurer is obligated to indemnify both property loss and the income loss. Refusal violates the principle of indemnity. Under NCDI guidelines, unfair claims settlement practices may include failing to provide coverage as indicated in the policy. Ref. ICP 030 NC Fair Trade Practices Act SS8 6315. Question 2. The growing trend in errors and omissions claims highlights the importance of producer conduct. An independent insurance agent named Angela mistakenly tells a commercial client that flood damage is covered under their standard commercial property policy. Months later, the business sustains major flood damage only to find out the loss isn't covered. What liability does Angela likely face? A. Angela is protected under the insurer's flood policy rider. B. Angela may be liable under an EO claim for providing negligent misrepresentation. C. Angela has no liability if the client didn't request flood insurance in writing. D. Angela is liable only if the loss was intentional. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Angela, acting as a licensed insurance agent, has a duty of care under both common law and the NCDA ethical standards to provide accurate information. Giving incorrect advice that results in a financial loss may constitute professional negligence, which is what errors and omissions EO coverage is designed to address. Misrepresentation, even if unintentional, is actionable under NC-DEN Stat SS8 325 and SS8 6315, making the agent liable for misinformation. Her independent status increases responsibility, as she is presumed to be acting on her own professional judgment. Question 3. When considering the concept of insurable interest, which of the following best illustrates this principle? A. A subcontractor insuring the property of a general contractor without a contractual obligation. B. A business partner insuring a shared warehouse they own. C. A competitor insuring a rival's inventory in case of price drops. D. A landlord's neighbor insuring the tenant's leased contents. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Insurable interest means the policyholder must suffer a financial or economic loss if the insured property is damaged. In option B, a owner of a warehouse has direct economic interest and thus meets the criteria. This is consistent with NC insurance law and general contract law, which uphold the principle that only those with the direct stake in the property may obtain coverage. The absence of such an interest render the policy void as against public policy with NC-DEN Stat SS8 44. Question 4. Throughout the course of investigating a claim, the insured business, owned by Mr. Malik, suffered robbery involving forced entry and theft of high-value electronics. The commercial property policy includes special causes of loss form with theft coverage. However, the insurer denied the claim, citing that employee theft is excluded. Mr. Malik insists the burglary was external. What action should the insurer take next? A. Reject the claim permanently due to theft exclusion. B. Investigate whether the loss involved an employee before applying the exclusion. C. Approve the claim automatically under the special form. D. Refer Mr. Malik to law enforcement and decline involvement. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The special causes of loss Form CP 1030 includes theft coverage unless specifically excluded, such as in cases of employee dishonesty, which typically require a separate crime policy or fidelity bond. The insurer cannot arbitrarily apply exclusions. Instead, they must conduct due diligence to determine the nature of the loss. This aligns with the North Carolina Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act SS 6315, which mandates fair investigation standards. Denial without verification could constitute an unfair trade practice. Question 5. To illustrate this point, consider a business that insures multiple buildings under a blanket commercial property policy. A fire damages one of the locations that the insurance company denies full payment due to underinsurance at the aggregate level. What provision is most likely being applied? A. Agreed value clause. B. Coinsurance clause. C. Value policy law. D. Replacement cost clause. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The coinsurance clause requires that the insured maintain a certain percentage, usually 80% or 90% of the property's total value in insurance. Under a blanket policy, the coinsurance requirement applies to the total combined values. If the total insurance is below this threshold, the insurer can reduce the payout proportionally. This practice aligns with industry standards and ISO commercial forms, and failure to meet coinsurance requirements leads to partial compensation per CP 010 provisions. Question 6. Examining the consequences of negligence, a North Carolina roofing contractor is sued after a section of unsecured roofing material falls and injures a pedestrian. The contractor has commercial general liability (CGL) coverage. Which coverage part applies and what condition must be met for indemnification? A. Coverage C, if the injury is work-related. B. Coverage B, if the claim involves reputation. C. Coverage if bodily injury occurred due to negligence. D. Coverage C, if the medical expenses are above $10,000. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Coverage of the CGL policy protects the insured against claims of bodily injury and property damage caused by negligence. The pedestrian's injury qualifies as bodily injury caused by an act of negligence, which is typically covered under Coverage A, provided the injury is due to an occurrence and not excluded. This conforms to CG 01 policy language and North Carolina interpretation. Negligence under tort law. Coverage C is for medical payments without regard to fault, but is limited and not meant for negligence claims, defense, or settlements. Question 7. According to recent studies on commercial inland marine insurance, which of the following best distinguishes it from standard commercial property insurance? A. Coverage is limited to scheduled premises. B. It covers liability rather than property. C. It insures property in transit and of fluctuating value. D. It only applies to waterborne cargo. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Commercial inland marine insurance is designed for property in transit at multiple locations or fluctuating value, such as construction equipment, art, or electronics. Unlike standard property insurance, it provides coverage regardless of location, making it more flexible. This aligns with the nationwide marine definition adopted by insurers and endorsed by the NAIC, which outlines the kinds of property qualify. Option D confuses it with ocean marine, which is more specific to sea transport. Question 8. The prevailing attitude toward licensing violations has prompted stricter enforcement in North Carolina. Lisa, an unlicensed individual, solicits commercial property coverage and accepts payment from a client. What legal consequence does Lisa most likely face? A. A fine, but no criminal charges if she returns the funds. B. A license revocation only if previously licensed. C. Criminal penalties and civil sanctions for unauthorized transaction. D. No consequence unless a claim is filed on the policy. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Under NC Den Stat SS 8. 3325, it is illegal to act as an agent or producer without license, including solicitation or accepting premiums. This constitutes an unauthorized transaction, which can result in both civil fines and criminal penalties, especially if the individual misrepresents themselves. The North Carolina Department of Insurance treats this as major violation, irrespective whether claim arises, because it undermines consumer protection. Question 9. Contrary to popular belief, a company that purchases an umbrella liability policy over their CGL and auto coverage must still be aware of what limitation A. Umbrella does not apply to bodily injury. B. Umbrella coverage replaces underlying limits. C. Umbrella policies may include self-insured retention for uncovered risks. D. Umbrella coverage applies only to property claims. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. While umbrella liability insurance extends the limits of underlying coverage, it also may provide coverage for some losses not included in the underlying policies. When this occurs, a self-insured retention must be met by the insured before the umbrella policy responds. This is a critical distinction from excess liability policies, which only follow the underlying, so it acts like a deductible and is outlined in umbrella policy language. This is supported by ISO 201 forms. Question 10. With respect to subrogation rights, a bakery in Raleigh experiences a fire due to faulty wiring installed by a contractor. After paying for the claim, the insurer sues the contractor to recover damages. What principle is this an example of? A. Indemnity. B. Contribution. C. Subrogation. D. Utmost good faith. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Subrogation allows the insurer, after paying a claim, to pursue a third party legally responsible for the loss. This helps prevent unjust enrichment of the insured and holds the negligent party accountable. The right of subrogation is embedded in most commercial policies and backed by NC common law and ISO standard forms. Indemnity supports the rationale, but subrogation is the specific mechanism used post-payment. Question 11. The fundamental question is how producers manage authority during the underwriting process. David, a newly appointed insurance producer, binds coverage for a commercial client without prior written approval from the insurer. The client suffers a loss 2 days later. The insurer refuses to honor the claim, stating the coverage was never authorized. Which principle best determines whether the insurer is still liable? A. Implied authority. B. Express authority. C. Apparent authority. D. Legal estoppel. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Apparent authority arises when the insurer's conduct leads a third party to reasonably believe that the agent has authority even if none was formally granted. If David routinely binds coverage and the insurer doesn't object or limit this behavior, courts may find the company bound by his actions. This is reinforced by NC Den Stat SS8 3376 in case law where courts have applied a stop principles to hold insurers accountable for their agents' perceived authority. Express and implied authority are internally conferred, but apparent authority affects third-party relationships. Question 12. In the absence of a comprehensive commercial property review, Natalie, the owner of a multi-tenant commercial building, forgot to add a newly built annex to her existing policy. A storm damages the annex. Natalie files a claim asserting she assumed it was covered, which provision would have best prevented the denial of her claim? A. Vacancy clause. B. Peak season endorsement. C. Newly acquired property extension. D. Agreed value provision. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. A newly acquired or constructed property extension included in the ISO building and personal property coverage form CP010 automatically covers new buildings or additions up to a specified limit and time, usually 30 days. Natalie's failure to notify the insurer after that period can invalidate coverage. This extension is designed to protect against gaps during expansion but requires action from insured after the temporary window. North Carolina recognizes the doctrine of contract clarity, assuming coverage without endorsement or inclusion is insufficient. Question 13. The correlation between valuation methods and claims settlement is crucial. A retail store insured on a replacement cost basis suffers a total loss. The insurer offers actual cash value ECV. Unless the property is rebuilt, the owner claims full replacement cost immediately. Which rule governs this dispute? A. Replacement cost is always paid regardless of rebuilding. B. Replacement cost is conditional upon actual replacement under most policies. C. Replacement cost applies only to liability claims. D. Replacement cost is not permitted in North Carolina commercial policies. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Replacement cost provisions typically require the insured to actually repair or replace the property before receiving payment above a CV. Until then, the insurer is only obligated to pay AC under the loss payment condition of the policy. CP 010. North Carolina enforces policy provisions per their written terms unless ambiguity exists. Courts uphold the actual replacement condition to prevent over-indemnification, aligning with the doctrine of indemnity. Question 14. By evaluating exclusions in the commercial general liability (CGL) policies, a printing company is sued for misleading advertising. Their CGL includes coverage B. Personal and advertising injury. Which of the following would most likely result in claim denial? A. The ad accused competitor of fraud. B. The ad used competitor's logo without permission. C. The ad made comparative price claims. D. The ad was broadcast on social media without approval. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Coverage B excludes injury resulting from knowing violation of rights or publication of material the insured knows is false. Accusing a competitor of fraud likely falls under intentional misconduct, which is excluded under is a CGA-01 forms. Using a logo without permission may be covered under infringement provisions if done unknowingly. Comparative pricing and platform are not automatic unless another policy condition applies. The intent behind the act is central to denial. Question 15. Taking into account the role of endorsements, a commercial policyholder adds an ordinance or law endorsement to their building and personal property coverage. Months later, their building suffers partial damage, and a new code mandates replacing undamaged portions. Which part of the endorsement will apply? A. Coverage loss to the undamaged portion. B. Coverage B. Demolition costs. C. Coverage C. Increased cost of construction. D. All of the above. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. The ordinance or law coverage endorsement CP45 typically includes three coverages. They loss to undamaged portion due to ordinance. B. Cost to demolish the undamaged part. C. Increased construction costs due to updated codes. In this case, the full breadth of the endorsement may apply. This coverage addresses gaps when ordinances or codes require demolition or rebuilding beyond the scope of physical damage. Is optional but critical in older structures, especially under North Carolina Building Code Council standards. Question 16. Upon closer examination, if a surplus lines broker places coverage with a non-admitted insurer for a commercial client, which of the following conditions must be met in North Carolina? A. No documentation of denied admitted markets is needed. B. The client must provide written consent after policy delivery. C. The broker must perform a diligent search and file an affidavit. D. The premium must be collected only after the policy is effective. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per NC Denstat SS8 21, placing insurance with non-admitted surplus lines insurers requires the broker to conduct diligent search among admitted carriers and file an affidavit documenting the process. Surplus lines placement is only permissible when the required coverage cannot be obtained from licensed insurers. The law also requires tax remittance and consumer notice. This safeguards consumers, allowing access to specialized coverage. Failing to comply could result in regulatory penalties or uncovered claims. Question 17. With the advent of gig economy risks, a tech startup purchases a business owner's policy bot. After a cyber attack exposes client data, they attempt to file a claim. The insurer denies it. Why? A. The loss is below the deductible. B. Cyber risk is excluded from most BOPs unless specifically endorsed. C. The business failed to report the loss in time. D. Personal injury is never covered under a BOP. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Most business owners' policies (BOPs) do not include cyber liability coverage by default. It must be endorsed separately via cyber liability riders or a standalone policy. Cyber-related exposures fall outside the traditional property and general liability protections unless added. ISO-BOP forms BP03 confirm this, and North Carolina DOI bulletins have highlighted the emerging gap in cyber protection for small businesses. Therefore, denial is appropriate if no endorsement exists. Question 18. The impact of misrepresentation is seen when Jamal applies for commercial crime coverage and fails to disclose a previous employee theft loss during the application. Months later, another employee commits theft and the insurer denies the claim. What legal concept allows for this denial? A. Subrogation. B. Concealment. C. Waiver. D. Adhesion. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Concealment refers to the intentional omission of material facts. In commercial insurance, especially crime coverage, prior loss history is material as it directly affects risk evaluation and underwriting. By failing to disclose it, Jamal violated the utmost good faith doctrine. Under NC Den Stat SS8 310, material misrepresentation or concealment can result in claim denial or policy rescission. Waiver would require the insurer to knowingly ignore the concealment, which is not the case here. Question 19. From a practical standpoint, a freight company insures its trucks under a business auto policy BAP with symbol 7 selected. One of the owner's personal trucks not listed on the schedule is involved in delivery accident. Will the BAP apply? A. Yes, because all owned autos are covered. B. No, because symbol 7 limits coverage to specifically scheduled autos. C. Yes, if the truck was used for business purposes. D. No, unless symbol 1 was selected. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Symbol 7 under ISO 01 forms applies to specifically described autos only. If the vehicle isn't listed on the policy, it is not covered regardless of business use. To ensure all owned autos are covered, symbol 2 or symbol 1, any auto must be used. North Carolina follows standard ISO forms, and misunderstanding these symbols can lead to critical coverage gaps. Hence, the BAP would respond in this case. Question 20. A key distinction between indemnity and subrogation arises when Sam's restaurant is destroyed due to a utility company's negligent gas line repair. His insurer pays the claim in full. Later, the insurer sues the utility company. What legal doctrine permits this? A. Aleatory contract principle. B. Subrogation. C. Insurable interest. D. Replacement cost condition. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Subrogation allows the insurer to step into the shoes of the insured after indemnification and seek recovery from responsible third parties. It prevents double recovery by the insured and holds the negligent party accountable. The principle is embedded in most commercial policies and recognized under NC insurance contract law. It complements indemnity but operates after the insurer pays, aligning with both policy and equitable doctrines. Question 21. The central argument for allowing businesses to tailor coverage lies in the use of endorsements. Mr. Sheffield, who owns a furniture manufacturing facility in Winston-Salem, recently added an endorsement to his property policy that specifically modifies the coinsurance clause. After a total fire loss, the insurer attempts to apply the original coinsurance penalty, reducing the claim payout. Which of the following endorsements most likely overrides this penalty? A. Replacement cost endorsement. B. Inflation guard endorsement. C. Agreed value endorsement. D. Functional replacement cost endorsement. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. The agreed value endorsement, CP010 or CP44, suspends the coinsurance clause as long as the insured and insurer agree on a stated value for the property and the insured maintains that coverage limit. In Mr. Sheffield's case, this endorsement legally nullifies any coinsurance penalty, and the insurer is bound to the previously agreed upon value according to the ISO commercial property forms. NC insurance law, once an agreed value endorsement is in place and conditions are met, applying coinsurance reductions would constitute breach of contract or unfair claims handling. SS8 6315. Question 22. From multiple perspectives, exclusions in commercial crime insurance create significant risk gaps. A tech company has employee theft coverage under a standard commercial crime form. An employee conspires with an outside party to steal software licenses and data, causing financial loss. The insurer denies the claim. Why might the denial be valid? A. The loss involved intellectual property, which is often excluded. B. The loss was committed by an outside party only. C. The employee was not officially on payroll. D. Crime forms do not cover licensed property. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Standard commercial crime coverage forms CR01 often exclude intellectual property, trade secrets, patents, and software data from covered property, while employee dishonesty is generally covered. Data and software licenses may fall under excluded categories unless specifically endorsed. NC courts interpret exclusions narrowly, but they uphold exclusions for intangible property unless policy language is ambiguous. Therefore, option A aligns with both ISO guidelines and NC commercial insurance practices. Question 23. In terms of underwriting decisions, an insurance company denies coverage for a commercial trucking firm based on its history of repeated late premium payments and poor safety records. Which underwriting concept most directly supports this decision? A. Risk pooling. B. Loss ratio evaluation. C. Indemnity principle. D. Subrogation strategy. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The loss ratio is a key underwriting metric that compares losses incurred to premiums earned. A persistently high loss ratio, especially when tied to operational risk factors like safety violations and premium instability, justifies declining coverage. ISO commercial auto underwriting guidelines support the use of loss, history, and credit behavior in risk evaluation. North Carolina permits insurers to use such data provided the criteria comply with fair underwriting practices under NCDI regulations. Question 24. As evidenced by legal precedents in North Carolina, a business owner discovers that a licensed insurance agent altered an application to secure a low premium without the client's consent. A subsequent claim is denied due to material misrepresentation. What is the most likely consequence for the agent? A. The agent may be charged with rebasing. B. The agent may face license revocation and possible civil liability. C. The agent will be protected by the insurer's EO coverage. D. No consequence if the client signed the policy. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Altering an application without consent constitutes fraud and material misrepresentation, which can lead to license suspension, revocation, and civil liability under NC Den Stat SS 83346 and SS 8270. The North Carolina Department of Insurance treats such actions as serious ethical and regulatory violations. Even if the insurer initially issues policy, the misrepresentation can void coverage and expose the agent to personal liability. EO coverage does not apply if fraud or intentional wrongdoing is proven. Question 25. The question remains whether a liability policy will respond to a subcontractor's negligence on general contractor's policy. General contractor hires roofer who causes damage to neighboring property. The property owner sues the general contractor. The GC's commercial general liability (CGL) policy includes subcontractor exception under the to work exclusion. What is the likely outcome? A. The damage is not covered due to the exclusion. B. The damage is covered because of the subcontractor exception. C. The damage is covered only if there was separate agreement. D. The damage is never covered under EGIA. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. That your work exclusion in the CGL form excludes coverage for the insured's own work, but it does not apply if the work was performed by subcontractor and the policy contains the subcontractor exception as it does in most unendorsed our CG Euro 1 forms. In this case, damage to third-party property caused by the subcontractor would still be covered. North Carolina courts generally enforce this exclusion, written provided the contractual relationships and coverage terms are clear. Question 26. Historically speaking, commercial property insurance has evolved to include special perils forms that shift the burden of proof. Under a special causes of loss form, what must the insurer demonstrate to deny a claim? A. That the damage was caused by a named peril. B. That the property was not properly scheduled. C. That the loss was due to an excluded peril. D. That the insured misrepresented the property's value. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. A special causes of loss form CP 1030 covers all direct physical loss unless specifically excluded. Therefore, the burden of proof shifts to the insurer, who must prove that the loss resulted from an excluded cause such as wear and tear, flood, or ordinance-related costs. North Carolina adopts this standard based on both ISO policy interpretation and case law precedent that reinforces insurer obligations under open peril contracts. Question 27. The validity of a contract is often determined by whether all essential elements are present. A commercial policy is challenged in court by an insured who claims he was coerced into signing under threat of losing a business deal. Which of the following elements of a legal contract is most in question? A. Consideration. B. Legal purpose. C. Competent parties. D. Mutual assent, offer and acceptance. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. 4. A contract to be enforceable, mutual assent, also known as offer and acceptance, must be freely given and without duress or coercion. If the insured can demonstrate they were forced or manipulated into signing, the contract may be rendered voidable. North Carolina contract law aligns with this view, and coercion directly undermines the voluntary nature of acceptance, rendering the policy potentially despite meeting other legal elements. Question 20. The effectiveness of the North Carolina Motor Vehicle Reinsurance Facility is shown when high-risk drivers are unable to obtain auto insurance. A trucking business applies for liability coverage for a driver with multiple TUI convictions. The insurer declines the policy. What is the appropriate recourse? A. The driver may seek assigned risk coverage through ARAIR. B. The driver must improve their record before reapplying. C. The driver must appeal to the NC Department of Transportation. D. The business must self-insure. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. The North Carolina Motor Vehicle Reinsurance Facility functions as an assigned risk pool for high-risk drivers who are unable to obtain coverage in the standard market. Commercial auto risks that meet statutory eligibility may obtain liability insurance through this facility, ensuring access to state-mandated coverage. The program is authorized under NC DEN-STAT SS 837 with regular, overseen by the NC Department of Insurance. Question 29. While examining inland marine policies, a construction firm needs coverage for tools kept on various job sites. The insured believes the commercial property policy will respond. Which inland marine form is most appropriate to cover such equipment? A. Bailey's Customer Coverage Form. B. Contractor's Equipment Floater. C. Installation Coverage Form. D. Builder's Risk Coverage Form. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The Contractor's Equipment Floater insures owned or leased tools and equipment used by contractors at various job sites or in transit. Standard commercial property coverage only applies to scheduled locations, which would leave tools at mobile sites uncovered. Inland marine forms are specifically designed for such mobile risks. The nationwide marine definition supports this classification, and insurers in NC offer ISO or proprietary forms to meet this demand. Question 30. Across different scenarios, the principle of utmost good faith governs disclosure obligations during the insurance application process. If a business applicant knowingly omits prior lawsuits alleging faulty products while applying for CGL coverage, which legal concept has been violated? A. Adhesion. B. Aleatory principle. C. Utmost good faith. D. Insurable interest. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. The doctrine of utmost good faith requires applicants to disclose all material facts that may influence underwriting decisions. Failing to report prior lawsuits related to business practices is a material omission which could justify policy rescission or denial of claim. North Carolina law upholds this principle as a foundational element of insurance contracts, and misrepresentation or concealment can lead. Punitive actions under SS 8 310 and SS 8 6315